My friends, let us come together in a spirit of quietness. Let us come with no desire to change the world, no attempt to rearrange outer circumstances, but simply with a willingness to listen deeply, silently to the presence that is always here. For the spiritual life does not begin in words, in books, or in human reasoning. It begins in that sacred moment when we withdraw attention from the outer scene and become aware of a presence that is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. In this stillness, something snorts begins to stir, something ancient, something eternal, something that has always been the very life of our being. It is from this place that all true spiritual demonstration flows. You see, we have been trained by the world to believe that results are achieved through effort, through strong will, through emotional intensity, through striving and pleading and struggling. But in the spiritual life, nothing of this sort is required. In fact, the more strenuous the effort, the further we are from the realization of truth. For spiritual demonstration is not the effect of human power. It is the expression of divine presence realized. All harmony, all healing, all peace, all supply, all protection. These do not come from the outside, nor do they respond to the push and pull of human desire. They unfold from within like a flower opening in the morning light, not because it is forced, but because it is in the nature of life to reveal its own beauty. So, let us understand this first principle. God is the only presence, the only power, the only law, and the only reality. And where God is recognized, harmony must appear not as a miracle in the human sense, not as the violation of natural law, but as the fulfillment of spiritual law. When Jesus healed, when he fed the multitude, when he stilled the waters, he did not perform these acts as a man gifted with supernatural abilities. He did not call upon powers unknown to others. He simply rested in the realization of one presence, one power, one life. And in that realization, discord could not maintain its claim. There is no struggle in the presence of one. There is no conflict where only God is. There is no disease where spirit alone is the life of being. What the world calls miracle is merely the human mind witnessing the natural activity of divine law. This activity is universal, it is impartial, it is ever-present, it is not dependent upon your worthiness, nor does it require the approval of any person, creed, or institution. It flows wherever it is recognized, just as the sun pours its light through any window that is opened. This is why our work from the very first moment of spiritual practice is not to acquire anything from God, not health, not supply, not guidance, not protection. The moment we attempt to get something, we have placed ourselves outside the realization of the infinite. You cannot add God to your life. You cannot bring God into a situation. You cannot call God into a need. God already is. Our task is simply to recognize what is already present, to rest in it, to become quiet enough to feel its activity within the sanctuary of our own being. And as we do, something remarkable happens, not by human design, but by the nature of divine completeness. Outer conditions begin to reshape themselves in accordance with the inner realization, not because we asked, but because we understood. So in this first moment of our time together, let us lay down all the burdens we have carried, every attempt to fix, to change, to improve. Let us release the belief that something is missing, that something must be achieved, that something must be obtained from outside ourselves. None of this is required. Let us rest in the assurance that spiritual demonstration is the natural expression of the presence that lives itself as us. And as we proceed, let us do so with a quiet confidence that where the realization of God is, harmony must be, that where the consciousness of one is, fear dissolves, that where the presence is acknowledged, its activity becomes visible. This is the beginning of our journey into the secret law behind every so-called miracle, a law that is not hidden from us, but revealed in every moment of silence, every moment of inner listening, every moment in which we become still enough to feel the movement of spirit. And now we continue with hearts open and minds quiet into the next unfoldment of this truth. Let us continue now, quietly, gently, with the same stillness that began our meditation, for a spiritual truth cannot be grasped through a racing mind or an anxious heart. It must be approached as one approaches a holy presence, softly, reverently, as though stepping into sacred ground. In this portion of our work, we turn to one of the great foundations of spiritual living, the principle that God is the only cause. Now, this is not a statement to be accepted intellectually or repeated as a formula. It is a revelation that must dawn within the depth of consciousness. For when the truth of it is realized, even for a moment, the entire structure of fear begins to dissolve. You see, the human mind is conditioned from birth to believe in many powers, many forces, many causes at work in our lives: health and disease, abundance and lack, good fortune and misfortune, heredity, climate, chance, the will of others, the forces of nature, even the passage of time. But none of these, absolutely none of these, has any spiritual power. There is only one cause, and that cause is God. When you let this principle sink deeply into your awareness, not as an idea, but as an inner realization, you begin to experience a freedom that the world cannot give. You begin to see that nothing external can enter your life to enrich it, and nothing external can diminish it, for there is no external. There is only God expressed as individual being. Goldsmith would often put it this way: all that God is, you are. All that God has is yours, not by attainment but by inheritance. The activity of God as your consciousness is the only law operating in your experience. Let this be clear. God does not stand outside your life, governing it from afar. God is not a being who sends blessings or withholds them. God is not the cause of good events while something else is the cause of adversity. God is not one of many powers. God is the one power. Therefore, the moment you accept two powers, even subtly, you step out of the Christ consciousness and into the realm of fear. The belief in two powers is the root of all discord. It is the foundation of anxiety. It is the parent of suffering. For if there are two powers, at any moment, one of them may act against you. But in the realization of one, fear has no ground on which to stand. Think for a moment. If God is the only cause, then what is the cause of disease? What is the cause of lack? What is the cause of conflict or confusion? These are not effects produced by a real power. They arise from a belief, a mental image accepted as reality by the human mind. They have no spiritual law to sustain them. They have no source in God. They have no permanence, no authority, no substance. They are shadows, nothing more. To attempt to fight them, resist them, or correct them is to grant them a reality they do not possess. This is why Jesus never struggled with conditions. He never treated disease as a substance, lack as a force, or fear as an entity. He simply recognized the truth that God alone is cause, and everything unlike God has no actual existence in the realm of spirit. And so harmony appeared, not because he made it happen, but because his consciousness allowed nothing else. Now, this principle does not deny that human beings may experience pain, suffering, or lack. It does not require you to pretend that your difficulties don't exist. What it does ask is this: do not look to the problem for its cause. Do not try to correct the effect. Do not attempt to manipulate conditions. Turn instead to the source. Turn within. For God is the only cause, and therefore God is the cause of all true being, all harmony, all completeness, all joy. When we rest in this recognition, when we withdraw attention from secondary causes and behold one, the appearance begins to shift, not by our effort, but by the law of our being. Think of a lamp surrounded by shadows. You need not chase the shadows, nor do you need to fight them. Simply light the lamp. The shadows dissolve of their own accord, for they were never something in themselves. So it is with the appearances of discord. They vanish in the presence of realized truth. And so, as we begin the deeper portion of this spiritual journey, let us carry this principle in our hearts. There is one cause, one presence, one power, one life, and that one is God, forever expressing itself in and as the individual. Nothing external can add to that. Nothing external can subtract from it. Your life is governed not by persons, conditions, or circumstances, but by the infinite that formed you of its own substance. As we continue into the next section of our unfolding, we will see how Jesus lived this truth, how he worked with it, and how this same consciousness becomes the foundation of all spiritual demonstration. Let us now turn our attention to the Master Jesus, whose life was the purest demonstration of the truth we have been contemplating. For Jesus did not come merely to perform wonders, nor to establish doctrines, nor to create a new religion. He came to reveal the nature of God as the very essence of individual being, and to show how this realization operates as harmony, healing, and freedom. When Jesus walked the earth, he did so with a singular consciousness. There is but one presence, one power, one life, and that life is the Father within me. He lived in the uninterrupted awareness of God as the only cause. And in that awareness, nothing unlike God could maintain itself. Observed carefully how he approached every situation, always from the standpoint of one. When confronted with disease, he never fought it. When he stood before lack, he never sought supply. When fear surrounded him, he never resisted it. When faced with danger, he never attempted to protect himself. Instead, he lifted his consciousness above the appearance and rested wholly in the truth. The Father within me doeth the works. Let us now turn our attention to the Master Jesus, whose life was the purest demonstration of the truth we have been contemplating. For Jesus did not come merely to perform wonders, nor to establish doctrines, nor to create a new religion. He came to reveal the nature of God as the very essence of individual being, and to show how this realization operates as harmony, healing, and freedom. And this is why Jesus could say with utter simplicity, "I can of mine own self do nothing." He recognized the nothingness of personal selfhood and the allness of God. He acknowledged that all power belongs to the invisible, not to form, not to matter, not to the condition, not even to the person. And so when a man came to Jesus pleading for healing, Jesus did not search for a technique or a method. He did not inquire into symptoms or histories. He did not weigh the severity of the condition. He simply looked beyond the appearance to the spiritual truth of the individual's being. He saw God there. He saw the completeness of the Father made manifest. He saw the Christ hidden from human sight but fully present in reality. This seeing was the healing. For when you behold the truth of another, you unveil that truth in your own consciousness, and what is realized within is revealed without. Jesus never tried to change the outer picture. He corrected the inner vision, and as the vision changed, the picture changed not by effort but by law. Consider the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. The human mind saw only scarcity, but Jesus lifted his eyes, meaning he raised his consciousness to the realization of omnipresence. And in that recognition, the illusion of limitation dissolved. Consider the storm on the sea. The disciples saw danger. Jesus saw God. And in the consciousness of the one, the appearance of discord subsided, for there was no power to sustain it. Consider the raising of Lazarus. Others saw death as a power. Jesus saw only life as the substance and law of being. His declaration, "I am the resurrection and the life," was not an affirmation of personal capacity. It was the recognition of divine activity present in that very moment. In every instance, his approach was the same. Lift consciousness above the appearance into the truth of God's allness, and let that truth reveal itself as harmony. There is no magic in this. There is no favoritism. There is no supernatural intervention. There is only the functioning of spiritual law. Now it is important to understand that Jesus never intended to be worshipped as an acceptee. He came as an example. He came to show that what he did, we also may do, not through personal power, but through the same realization of the one the Father within me doeth the works, is not a statement about Jesus alone. It is the spiritual truth of every individual. The difference is not in the presence but in the degree of realization. And so as we study how Jesus worked with the law, we are not learning how to imitate acts. We are learning how to enter the consciousness from which those acts flowed. The Master lived in constant recognition of one presence, one power, one cause, one life, one selfhood, one law. And wherever the consciousness of one is, harmony must appear, for there is nothing to oppose it. In our next unfolding, we will look more deeply at how this recognition enables us to see through the world of appearances, the foundation of Christ consciousness, and the essence of spiritual healing. Let us go deeper now, quietly, without hurry, for this next step is one of the most essential in all spiritual unfoldment. It is the very heart of the Christ message and the living center of every spiritual demonstration in the infinite way. We have spoken of God as the only cause, the only law, the only presence. Now, we must understand how this truth operates through our consciousness and how it dissolves the illusion of discord, limitation, and fear. The Master said, Judge not according to appearances. In those few words, he revealed the key to spiritual vision. For every discord, every condition of lack, every form of disease, every moment of fear is nothing more than an appearance, a mental picture arising from the world belief and separation. It is not the reality of God's creation, nor does it have spiritual substance, power, or law to sustain it. To the human sense, this world of appearances seems solid, authoritative, and unyielding. But to the spiritual consciousness, it is as transient as a shadow cast by a passing cloud. The appearance is not the reality. The reality is always God expressing itself as wholeness, harmony, and perfection. This is why Jesus could look upon the sick, the sinful, the poor, the fearful, and behold something entirely different from what the world was seeing. He did not accept the picture presented to the senses. He saw through it, saw beyond it into the invisible truth of being, and that seeing itself was the healing, not the words, not the touch, not the act, but the seeing. For Christ consciousness is the capacity to behold God where the human mind perceives imperfection. It is the inner knowing that rejects the testimony of the senses and abides steadfastly in the realization of the one presence. Now, this is not accomplished by effort. We do not force ourselves to believe something different from what we observe. We do not mentally declare perfection over imperfection, nor do we attempt to superimpose a spiritual truth upon a physical picture. Such practices merely engage the human mind, and the human mind cannot perceive spirit. Seeing through appearance is an act of grace, an inner shift of vision, a quiet recognition of the invisible. It is a spiritual discernment that comes when the mind grows still enough to let the presence reveal itself. You see, when you look at a person or a condition with a human sense of sight, you behold only form, flesh, behavior, circumstances, symptoms. But when the inner eye opens the single eye of spiritual vision, you behold the Christ, the real identity untouched by appearance. And as you behold that truth, you bear witness to God's activity, and the appearance begins to yield. Not because you fought it, not because you demanded its change, but because you saw through it. To see through appearance is to stand in the realization that nothing exists apart from God. It is to know that every individual is the expression of the one life. It is to understand that no condition has the power to alter the nature of God's creation. In this state of consciousness, harmony is not created. It is revealed. Peace is not attained. It is uncovered. Healing is not brought about. It is realized. Let us understand this well. We do not heal disease. We do not correct lack. We do not fix broken conditions. These belong to the world of appearance. And the world of appearance is not the reality of spirit. We simply lift our vision above appearance until we behold the truth that was there from the beginning. And it is this inner beholding that dissolves the illusion, just as the rising sun dissolves the darkness without ever battling it. As you grow in this realization, you will find that your concerns without conditions diminish. You will begin to perceive that everything which comes to your attention does so only to give you the opportunity to look beyond it, to witness the operation of spiritual law in the face of human belief. Every appearance becomes an invitation to behold the Christ. We simply lift our vision above appearance until we behold the truth that was there from the beginning. The miracle occurs not when outward conditions change, but when we are no longer hypnotized by appearance, when we behold the invisible reality that was always present. This is the essence of Christ's consciousness. This is the secret behind spiritual demonstration. This is the foundation upon which Jesus built his entire ministry. And in our next unfolding, we will explore how to enter the inner stillness from which this vision becomes possible, how to quiet the mind, open the heart, and let the presence reveal itself without effort. Let us move gently now into the heart of our practice, the sacred work of entering inner stillness. For all the principles we have spoken of thus far, one presence, one power, the unreality of appearance, the Christ vision, are known only in silence. They are not apprehended through thinking, nor through study, nor through argument. They are revealed in quietness. When the appearance is discord, it invites you to see harmony. When the appearance is lack, it invites you to see abundance. When the appearance is disease, it invites you to see wholeness. When the appearance is fear, it invites you to see the presence that casts out fear. And when the appearance is sin, it invites you to see innocence, the purity of God expressed as individual being. This silence is not something you create, it is something you sink into. It is already here beneath the noise of thought, beneath the turbulence of emotion, beneath the agitation of the human mind. It is your natural state, your spiritual home, the abiding place of the presence. You will notice that every great spiritual teacher, every prophet, every mystic, every enlightened soul has spoken of the necessity of silence. Not the silence that is merely the absence of sound, but the silence that is the absence of mental activity, the stillness in which the ego loses its voice and the spirit gains its hearing. And this is the essence of the infinite way meditation. Not a doing but an allowing, not a seeking but a resting, not an effort to reach God, but an openness to let God reveal himself as your very being. Goldsmith would often say, "Be still and let the presence announce itself." There is no technique that brings God closer, for God is already the life of your life, the mind of your mind, the breath of your breath. The purpose of meditation is not to draw God near, but to remove the veil of mental noise that prevents you from feeling what is eternally present. So when you enter stillness, do not begin by asking for anything. Do not attempt to solve a problem. Do not attempt to get guidance, healing, or supply. The moment you attempt to get something, the mind becomes active and you remain at the surface of consciousness. Instead, come as you are, quietly, humbly, without ambition, without desire, simply to rest in the presence. You may begin by closing your eyes, letting the world fade from your senses, breathing gently without effort, and turning your attention inward. You are not trying to think of God. You are not trying to visualize God. You are not trying to repeat sacred words. All of these keep the mind active. Instead, you simply become receptive to the invisible. If thoughts arise, and they will, do not fight them. Do not chase them away. Let them come. Let them go like clouds passing across the sky. Your task is not to resist thought, but to stop following it. And in that gentle refusal to follow thought, a space opens, a stillness is felt. A presence begins to stir, not as a sensation, not as an emotion, but as a subtle awareness of peace. You may begin by closing your eyes, letting the world fade from your senses, breathing gently without effort, and turning your attention inward. Instead, you simply become receptive to the invisible. Perhaps you cannot describe it, perhaps you cannot grasp it with words, but it is there, quiet, tender, alive. Now do not attempt to hold it, do not attempt to deepen it, do not attempt to keep it. Simply rest in it, rest without effort. In this stillness, no problem exists, no fear exists, no lack exists. For the presence itself is harmony, wholeness, and completeness. If you linger here even briefly, you will feel the I, the divine I, taking precedence over the personal sense of self. And in that sacred exchange, the personal I fades into the background and the infinite I, the presence, comes forward. This is the secret of spiritual demonstration. If you linger here even briefly, you will feel the I, the divine I, taking precedence over the personal sense of self. And in that sacred exchange, the personal I fades into the background and the infinite I, the presence, comes forward. If you enter this silence daily, even briefly, even imperfectly, even with a mind that wanders, you will discover that something in you grows deeper, quieter, more anchored. The world will begin to lose its power. Fear will diminish. The sense of separation will dissolve, and the presence will become the unnoticed companion of every moment. For the ultimate purpose of meditation is not to experience something during the meditation period, but to carry the atmosphere of stillness into your daily life, to live from a place where the mind is no longer the master, but the servant, where the presence leads and you follow. This is the threshold where the spiritual life truly begins. And in the next unfolding, we will see how from this state of inner recognition, the law of harmony flows naturally. Where presence is acknowledged, presence becomes visible. And now, my friends, having entered that sacred stillness where the presence announces itself, We come to the heart of spiritual demonstration. Where the presence is recognized, harmony must flow. This is not a poetic statement. It is not an idealistic hope. It is a spiritual law as dependable as gravity, as certain as the rising of the sun. A law that operates not because we believe in it, but because it is the nature of God to express itself as harmony wherever it is realized. You see, the presence is always here. It fills all space, it animates all life. It is the substance of all being. But it becomes effective in our experience only at the point of recognition. Not because God has withheld anything, not because God responds only when we call, but because the human mind absorbed in the world of appearances lies unaware of the very life that sustains it. Recognition opens the window. Grace shines through. You need not ask it to shine. You need not command it. You need not urge it into action. It is already shining. You have simply removed the veil. Let us understand this clearly. As long as you look to the outer scene for cause, you remain bound to the appearance. But the moment you turn inward and recognize one presence, the appearance begins to yield to reality. This is the spiritual law. Harmony is not created by thought. It is not manufactured by prayer. It is not earned through effort. It is not the reward of faith. It is the inevitable expression of God realized. Imagine for a moment a room that has been dark for years. You do not fight the darkness. You do not wrestle with it. You do not reason with it. You do not pray it away. You simply open the blinds. The light enters not because you forced it, but because light is the nature of the sun. So it is with spiritual harmony. It enters the moment recognition opens the inner blinds, and the darkness, disease, fear, lack, confusion disappears of its own accord. You did not conquer it. You did not overpower it. You did not heal it. It simply could not remain in the presence of light. This is why Jesus never spoke of healing in the sense we understand it. He spoke of revealing the truth that had been obscured by human belief. He lived in such a state of recognition that the illusions of the world, sickness, sin, fear could not maintain their appearance in his presence. He was not performing miracles. He was witnessing reality, and so must we. For when we rest in inner stillness, when the personal self is quiet, when the mind is open, something remarkable begins to happen. The activity of God, which has been present all along, begins to shape itself in visible form. We do not direct this activity. We do not influence it. We do not instruct it. We simply behold it. Harmony flows because harmony is the nature of the presence. Supply flows because supply is the activity of the infinite. Peace flows because peace is the nature of spirit. Healing flows because wholeness is the truth of being. Guidance flows because divine intelligence is the mind of every individual life. None of these are added to you. They are revealed through you. And yet, let us be very clear. This revelation does not take place because you have uttered a sacred phrase, or because you have repeated a truth with conviction, or because you have summoned emotional intensity. It takes place because you have entered the stillness in which God is allowed to be God. Where the presence is recognized, it manifests. Where it is unrecognized, it remains invisible, not absent but unnoticed. Therefore, the entire secret of spiritual living is the cultivation of recognition moment by moment, situation by situation, until the presence becomes the atmosphere in which you think, the ground upon which you walk, the life through which you live. And in that atmosphere, you will discover that things you once struggled with begin to resolve without effort. The people you feared begin to soften. Conditions you dreaded begin to shift. The burdens you carried begin to fall away. Not because you have changed the world, but because you have changed your vision. Not because you have influenced the outer, but because you have recognized the inner. Harmony flows not from action, but from awareness, not from doing, but from being. This is the great mystery of the spiritual path. God acts through recognition, and recognition reveals harmony as the natural state of existence. In our next unfolding, we will see how this law can be applied in daily experiences, how we can walk through life with a quiet assurance that the presence goes before us, preparing the way, dissolving every appearance of discord before we meet it. Let us move gently into the practical aspect of our journey, not the practice of manipulating life, not the practice of fixing conditions, but the practice of recognition in the midst of ordinary human experience. For if the presence is truly infinite, if it is the substance, the law, and the life of all being, then it must be as present at the kitchen sink as in meditation, as present when paying bills, as when reading scripture, as present in conflict, as in solitude. The spiritual life is not lived apart from daily experience. Daily experience becomes the temple in which the spiritual life is realized. Now, how do we proceed? Very quietly, very simply. We begin by withdrawing our dependence from anything external, not by abandoning our responsibilities, nor by ignoring the world, but by ceasing to look to persons, conditions, circumstances, or objects for what can come only from God. The moment we expect something from the outer security, love, supply, peace, we have stepped away from the infinite and placed our trust in the finite. And so the first step is the recognition there is no external source of good. God alone is the source and God is within. Carry this recognition with you as you move through your day. When fear appears, you snorts do not argue with it. You do not try to overcome it. You do not analyze it. You simply turn inward for a moment and remember God is the only presence. Fear has no power because there is no power apart from God. And then you grow still resting in that presence until the sense of fear begins to dissolve. It dissolves not because you conquered it, but because it has no law to sustain it. When lack or financial worry appears, do not try to think your way out. Do not rehearse possible solutions. Do not panic. Pause. Turn within. Become aware of the invisible. God is the substance of all form. There is no reality in lack, only the appearance. You rest in this knowing, not trying to produce supply, but remembering that supply is already flowing from the infinite as your life. And little by little the fear begins to fade, replaced by a quiet assurance that the presence is fulfilling itself. Then often without your intervention, opportunities open, needs are met, the way becomes clear. Not because you planned, but because you recognized when. You encounter difficult people. You do not attempt to change them. You do not resist, argue, or correct. Instead, remember that Christ is the true identity of every individual. I will behold the Christ here, even if the human appearance suggests otherwise. And as you rest in that vision, the atmosphere shifts, perhaps not instantly, but inevitably, for no illusion can withstand the gaze of spiritual recognition. Often the outer relationship softens or resolves, or simply ceases to trouble you when the body presents discomfort or disease. Again, you do not fight the condition. You do not engage in mental struggle. You do not demand healing. You withdraw inwardly and silently acknowledge there is one life, and that life is God. It is the life of this body. It is whole, complete, perfect. The appearance does not touch reality. You rest, you listen, you allow the presence to reveal itself. Healing then becomes an unveiling, not an achievement. It is the natural activity of divine life realized when confusion, indecision, or lack of direction arises. Become still. Do not force answers. Do not strain for clarity. Simply remember God is the intelligence of my being. The solution already exists in consciousness. Then wait quietly, receptively, and the way forward will reveal itself in its own time, not as a mental conclusion, but as an in. Our knowing, a gentle prompting, a sense of rightness. When the mind becomes agitated, busy, or overwhelmed, do not attempt to discipline it through force. Simply step back inwardly and remember, I of myself do nothing. The presence within is the activity of my mind. In that instant, even a moment of silence, the agitation begins to lose its hold. For the presence does not remove problems, it removes the false sense of self that believes it must solve them. The secret of daily practice, little by little you will discover that every circumstance of life becomes an invitation to turn inward, not to escape the world, but to see the world through spiritual vision. Every appearance becomes an opportunity to witness the law at work. Fear invites recognition of love. Lack invites recognition of substance. Discord invites recognition of peace. Illusion invites recognition of reality. And each time you choose recognition over reaction, you strengthen the atmosphere of your consciousness until you begin to walk through the world with a quiet inner knowing. The presence goes before me. The presence surrounds me. The presence is my life, my supply, my safety, my peace. This is not imagination, it is not wishful thinking, it is not order suggestion, it is the truth, and as you live from it, your experience becomes aligned with it. In our next unfolding, we will take this one step deeper into the very heart of spiritual power, where we learn that the personal self has no role, and that all demonstration is the activity of God alone. As we come now to a deeper level of our unfolding, let us approach this truth with great reverence. For we stand at the threshold of one of the most sacred revelations in the spiritual life. The world is filled with teachings about power, personal power, mental power, emotional power, willpower, psychic power. And in the pursuit of these, many have wandered far from the simplicity of the spiritual path. For in the realm of spirit, there is no personal power. There is no you who heals, no you who manifests, no you who commands spiritual forces. There is only God. And when this is understood not merely as a statement but as an inner realization, the entire burden of life drops away. You see, all suffering arises from the sense that I as a personal self must do something. I must solve the problem. I must create the supply. I must make right decisions. I must heal the body. I must protect myself. I must secure my future. This is the great weariness of the human condition. It is the cause of fear, frustration, anxiety, and struggle. But all of this is built upon an illusion, the illusion that there is a selfhood apart from God, a selfhood with responsibilities, burdens, and powers of its own. Spiritual awakening begins the moment this illusion is seen through. Jesus expressed it perfectly. I can of mine own self do nothing. He did not say this in humility. He said it in truth. He spoke from the clear realization that the personal I is not the actor, not the healer, not the provider, not the source, the Father within, the presence, the infinite. The one is the only doer. This is the true meaning of spiritual power. Spiritual power is not something you acquire. It is not something you develop. It is not something you wield. Spiritual power is the activity of God expressing itself when the personal sense of I becomes silent. Imagine an electric lamp. The lamp does not produce the light. It does not generate it, invent it, or control it. It simply stands still, open, unobstructed, allowing the current to flow. The lamp does nothing but yield. So it is with you. Spiritual power flows only when the personal self yields, when you stop trying to make something happen and rest in the realization that God already is the life and LA of your being. This yielding is not passive. It is not resignation. It is not fatalism. It is the highest form of spiritual activity. It is the recognition of the one presence in place of the many appearances. And the moment you yield the human sense of self, you become a transparency for the divine. This is why Goldsmith spoke so often of impersonalizing both good and evil. If you believe that good comes from you, or that evil can act upon you, you have accepted a universe of many powers. And in a universe of many powers, there can be no true peace. But in the universe of one, there is nothing to fear, nothing to resist, nothing to overcome. Spiritual power is the activity of this one invisible, silent, effortless, yet more real than anything the world can offer. Now let us make this practical. When you are faced with a problem in body, in finances, in relationships, in work, do not attempt to bring spiritual power to the problem. Spiritual power does not act on conditions. Spiritual power acts in spite of conditions. This means that you take your attention off the problem entirely and turn within to the presence. You become still. You listen, you wait, you rest in the quiet knowing this is not mine to solve. God is the life of this situation. The presence is already the fulfillment. I yield, and as you yield, the false sense of responsibility falls away. The mental noise gets, and the presence begins. It's activity, an activity that is always harmonious, always wise, always complete. You do not direct this activity. You do not try to shape it. You do not attempt to define the outcome. You stand still. You behold. You let. This is the secret of spiritual mastery. This is why the great mystics lived lives of extraordinary peace amidst worldly challenges. They knew that God is the only power, and that the personal self has no role but to yield. This is the true meaning. G of Christ consciousness. The recognition that the I that lives you is not the mortal sense of self, but the infinite I, the presence that never slumbers, never falters, and never fails. As you enter more deeply into this realization, you will find that you are no longer striving, no longer forcing, no longer fearing, no longer calculating. You are living from an inner rest, an inner confidence, an inner assurance that needs no outward confirmation. For the presence itself becomes the activity of your mind, the strength of your body, the order of your affairs, the peace of your heart. This is spiritual power, God being God through you as you for you. In our next unfolding, we will come to the closing revelation, the gentle, profound recognition that as we release personal identity and yield to the infinite, we enter into a life of peace, rest, and assured unfoldment. And now, beloved friends, we come to the quiet close of our time together. Not a conclusion, not an ending, but a gentle resting place in the awareness we have allowed to unfold within us. For the spiritual life does not culminate in knowledge, nor in doctrine, nor in practice, but in realization. The simple, profound, knowing that God is the only presence, the only power, the only life, the only selfhood of every individual being. If through this journey even one veil has been lifted, even one false sense dissolved, even one moment of stillness felt, then the work has begun. Not the work of self-improvement, nor the work of making something happen, but the sacred work of yielding to the presence that has always lived at the center of your being. Let us remember, there is nothing to attain, there is nothing to strive for, there is nothing to become, there is only the recognition of what already is. Peace is not ahead of you, peace is the nature of the I that lives you. Love is not something. To receive. Love is the substance out of which you are formed. Harmony is not something to create. Harmony is the activity of God revealing itself through your consciousness. Healing is not the correction of a condition. Healing is the unveiling of reality. Everything you have sought, everything you have prayed for, everything you have struggled to achieve has been present within you from the beginning, waiting only for recognition. And now in this quiet moment, let that recognition take its rightful place. Let your breath soften, let the mind loosen its grip, let the heart open, not upward, not outward, but inward to the one who has never left, never changed, never faltered, never failed. Rest now in the peace of this awareness. The I that I am is God. The life that I live is God in expression. The mind through which I think is God's mind. The love through which I feel is God's love. And the peace in which I rest is God's own peace. Let this truth settle not as a thought, not as a belief, but as a presence. When Jesus said, "My peace I give unto you," he did not give a human peace dependent on circumstance. He gave the peace of one who knows no opposite, the peace that flows from the realization of oneness. Let that peace be yours now. Carry it gently into your day, into your relationships, into your work, into the smallest details of life. For wherever you walk, God walks. Wherever you speak, God speaks. Wherever you rest, God rests. Wherever you are, the presence is in all its fullness. And as you move forward, remember it is not you who lives the spiritual life. It is the presence living itself was you. Surrender to that. Trust that. Rest in that. For in that surrender all fear dissolves, all striving melts, all searching ends. And what remains is peace. The peace that passes understanding. The peace that needs no reason. The peace that simply is. Thank you, beloved friend, for walking this path with me, for opening your consciousness to truth and for allowing the light within you to be recognized. You are never alone. You are never separate. You are never without guidance. The presence goes before you, walks beside you, lives within you, and expresses as you now and forever. Rest in this peace, live in this peace, be this peace. This is the end of the outline, but it is the beginning of a life lived in realization,